Well, I've been to several countries. I think I might travel every month. So firstly, actually, I went to Switzerland to meet several potential our PR candidates, and also made an agreement with one of the UN organizations, which is ITU, International Telecommunication Union, which was one of the big things. And also I visited several other developing world as well, like Indonesia or even Africa, Rwanda, in order to see what's going on in developing countries, especially in the blockchain sector. And especially what I really feel fascinated is with that, especially even in the developing country, there are lots of potential of using blockchain in especially public sector and also financial sector as well. And I think actually the perspective and the views on blockchain is pretty much different from the one that we actually had in advanced world. And then that was very interesting actually lessons that I got. Well, in advanced world, main discussions and debate on the blockchain is pretty much also focused on decentralization versus centralization. A lot of people, argued that centralized authority has sometimes a lot of troubles and problems. It's a lack of transparency and etc. etc. So, but the problem is that especially the challenges that we are facing as a blockchain and people is that it's not that centralization is always bad or centralization is always inefficient. So you really have to find, why do we need, the blockchain? You have to really justify sometimes the why the blockchain is essentially needed to disrupt the legacy system. So basically, it's some kind of fighting against the legacy system, which is of course sometimes very valuable and fun and battle. But I mean, in developing world, even the legacy system sometimes doesn't exist. It means that they have a lot of social economic problem. So basically, they really look at the opportunity of for blockchain as a way to solve and tackle really their fundamental social economic problem. For example, if you wanted to deploy certain decentralized ID system based on blockchain in the advanced world, and probably a lot of advanced countries already have very good centralized legacy system to managing the national ID, for example. But in the developing country, even a lot of people don't have any legal identification. So they really wanted to use digitalization, digital technology to provide some kind of identification. In developing world, the blockchain is seen as a new way to transform their society, their economics, and then their situation. So that was something that I found is very fascinating. It's a fundamental difference between the advanced world and developing and emerging market. Yeah, well, based on my experience of living in Europe for around 10 years, and I was quite surprised because I think it's kind of more like a cultural thing. It's more like a culture thing, So, for example, in here in Korea, then you have to get the sort of really big stamp, and also you have to get the notary to really prove that this document is original, or you got to really exactly that person to write this document, etc., etc. But in many cases in the advanced world, you just even handwriting with the signature, and it's sometimes regarded as a really true, genuine document which is written by yourself. But that's not the case in many developing countries, and especially one of the interesting things actually find, especially from Mongolia, is that if you really wanted to get your passport from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or whatsoever, and you first have to go to the district office to get the certificate of residence, which is also not the official document issued by the government, right? But I mean, in order to prove that this is the official documents from the government, you have to go to the notary, and then you have to get another stamp and you submit it. So which means that there is really lack of trust among all different, even reliable government organizations. So I think that blockchain can play a very important role, especially in this kind of really a society with the lack of trust, because as you know, once the data is saved in the block, It's not possible to make counterfeit and fake, and it's immutable, so that you can actually build more trust by mechanizing trust. So I think that kind of possibility is definitely something that we can expect with if you especially focus on developing.